والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. Alhamdulillah, it's a great pleasure to be back again in Sweden, and even greater pleasure to have this little guy attending. Alhamdulillah, so extra blessings for me. So inshallah I'm going to move quickly on because the times are quite short and we're running already a little bit behind. So what I've been asked to speak about, or we've agreed to speak about, is a selection of aphorisms or selection of wise sayings from the people of the path. And inshallah what I've done is I've taken a selection from two books, both with the same title, al-Hikm. Hikam means aphorisms or wise sayings, and one is by a very early scholar, Abu Madyan al-Maghribi, and the other is by Ibn Ata'illah al-Sikandari. Inshallah we'll come to the biography in a few minutes. But first of all, let's look at the word hikam. It comes from the word hikmah, wisdom. And wisdom is important because this is part, in fact I shouldn't say part, it's actually the essence of what we say the Quran. When we talk about Quran and Sunnah, wisdom is actually the essence of both. And in some ways, what we're aiming to do in this retreat, which is in some ways described as a Sufi retreat, but the reality of what Sufism is, or the reality of this path, is finding or touching on the essence of the Quran and Sunnah. It's not something external to the Quran and Sunnah, it's not something external to Islam, it's an essential part of it. And that's why I particularly like the title, the choice of al-Hikm. So we have in the Quran the word hikam or hikmah, and hikmah is described in real terms as the thing which is making something exact. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is described as al-Hakim, he's al-Hakim because of, when you hear the word Hakim, it usually appears with the word Alim or Kareem, or it follows a verse to do with creation. And the reason why the verses are connected to creation is because wisdom is how creation is created. It's according to wisdom. Everything has its own wisdom. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي يَبْدَأُ الْخَلْقِ. He is the one who initiated creation. ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ. And then He will make it happen a second time. And that's why I said the word wisdom is actually the essence of what the Quran and Sunnah is. It's because knowing who you are is knowing where you've come from and where you're going to. You were created and you will be recreated. وهو الذي يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده وهو أهون عليه. And this recreation, bringing you back from the dead, is just as easy as the first time. In fact, it's easier. وله المثل الأعلى. And of course, for him it belongs to the loftiest similitude, meaning that creating a first time and a second time doesn't really mean anything. These are just words that we use to try and understand what He does. But it's not that He begins and He makes something easy and something difficult. These are just words. So وَلَهُ الْمَثْلُ الْأَعْلَى فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. And He is the Almighty and Al-Hakim, the one who is wise. So here you see the word wisdom being connected to this process of creation. So when we talk about Al-Hakim is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wise one. So here, when we're talking about wisdom, can you imagine how high the status of this topic is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself describes Himself as the wise one? So here it's related to the who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And then after that, He then points to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and He indicates how wisdom is part of the prophetic message. It is part of who the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is. It's part of what he was sent for. He says, "Kama arsalna fiikum rasulan." A similar favor has been given to you. In the same way, we have sent to you a messenger. Arsalna fiikum rasulan. And he says fiikum, and the word fiikum is interesting because fiikum means, fi is within you. Fi means in. Fiikum means amongst you. It's part of who you are. So the Prophet ﷺ is sent not as part of creation from the Hakim, but at the same time the prophecy or the being of a prophet is connected to us in the fact that he has human flesh. He has human attributes. He does what human beings do. Because if he was an angel, then there would be less wisdom in this. The wisdom of him being a human being is so that we can relate to him. So we can relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as al-Hakim, especially in a beautiful place like this. We look out of the window, and again, I don't know why this place is so special. You look out of the window, and it always seems to be light and sunny, even when it's dark. Now, that was one of the miracles of this place last year. You know, we go out, look out at night, and it's still light and beautiful. It's because he's al-Hakim. But that takes us to look from outside, whereas here says fiikum, from within ourselves. So now this hikmah is coming closer to us in the form of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he is the one who is going to rehearse to you our verses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ, and he will purify you. He, the one who has been sent, will purify you. So the process of the sending of the Prophet ﷺ is to do with purification, with cleanliness. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابِ, and as the means of purifying you is that he will teach you the book. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and he will teach you wisdom. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمْ مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. So here, he's giving you the book, but he gives everybody the book. The book is given to everybody. It's given شهر Ramadan, which is coming, الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, this month which is coming, الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, it's been sent, the Quran has been sent down, هدى للناس, a guidance to all of humankind. هدى للناس, not just for the Muslims. The Quran is for everybody. هدى للناس. If it was just for us, it would say هدى للمسلمين, but it doesn't. It says هدى للناس. But then he goes on, وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِنَ الْهُدَى, but also clarification from within this guidance. So there's another level of guidance, which is beyond just the guidance, the open guidance which is for everybody, which is to know who the Hakim is. And to know who the Hakim is simple. And when people ask me, anyone that was with me in Norway last week, that people asked about Aqidah, how do you study this creed of ours? I don't do creed. You know, I just don't do creed. You know, I don't do Aqidah. It's not my thing. When people ask me to teach them Aqidah, what do? I take them in Scotland. It's the only place I seem to be able to teach them. I take them to a beautiful place called Glencoe. It's out in the mountains, and we go out there. It's about an hour and a half drive. We drive out to Glencoe, and we get out of the car, and I ask them, whoever wants to learn Aqidah, did this happen by accident? And then they have to stop and think, because even the most materialistic, scientific, supposedly logical person will have to stop and think when they see the beauty of the hikmah of this creation. When they see this wisdom, even they have to think. And some of them will say, yes. But even they don't have certainty in their own kufr. They'll still say yes, and if they say yes, great, we have a picnic and we forget the Aqidah, because there's no point. But if they say no, not by accident, we still have a picnic. But now they've started on the process of understanding the hudan linnas. Now what they need is bayyinat min al-huda. Now they need that further clarification, which only comes with belief. Because once you start to believe, then you get bayyinat min al-huda. And if you continue and continue and continue and continue, hudan linnas, wa bayyinat min al-huda, wal furqan. And then eventually what comes, you get clarification. You get pure understanding of what's right and what's wrong. So there's levels of this. So here, al-kitab wal-hikmah. Hikmah is the process of moving from hudan linnas, wa bayyinat min al-huda, wal furqan. The hikmah is what takes you. The wisdom takes you from that. And that's why the Quran is not accessible without the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to have the Quran wal-Hikmah, because the Hikmah is the implementation of the Quran through the human flesh of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can't pick the Quran up and be a good husband. Well, you can, but only if you're somehow connected to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when you read the Quran and you know how it's implemented as a husband, then you know how to be a good husband. And likewise a wife, likewise a father, likewise a son. And that's why the Quran isn't sufficient on its own, because it requires the Prophet ﷺ to teach us this hikmah within the Quran. That's why when the Sayyidatuna Aisha radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, was asked, what was he like? What was his character like? She said, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ the Quran. He was the Quran. His character was the Quran. So here, he teaches the Quran, وَالْحِكْمَةِ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمْ مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. And he teaches that which you didn't know before. So here you can see the hikmah is now moving from the skies and the mountains and the sea, where the land meets the sea, to the being of the Prophet ﷺ. And now it's closer to us. That's why it's connected to prophecy. But it's not only connected to prophecy, it's also connected to the wise people. And in the Quran we have a story of a man called Luqman al-Hakim. Luqman al-Hakim. And Luqman al-Hakim is, if I was just to talk for this whole weekend about Luqman al-Hakim, it wouldn't be sufficient. But what we will say, let's just take what the verse says. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا Luqman, and we have given Luqman al-Hikmah. We have given him hikmah. So this is a man that's not a prophet. This is a man that's not a prophet. He's been given a hikmah. And what is this special? أَنْ أَشْكُرِ لِلَّهِ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرْ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفْرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. We bestowed in the past wisdom on Luqman. Show your gratitude and sow the grateful ones for the profit of his own soul. But if any is ungrateful, verily Allah is free of all wants, worthy of all praise. Now here, we use the word Luqman al-Hakim, which is what we normally, if you refer to him, you don't just call him Luqman. It's inappropriate. So we call him Sayyidina Luqman or Luqman al-Hakim. Now here, if you look at what the Mufassirun have said, for example, Abdullah Razi, he says, you don't call somebody Hakim unless he has hikmah in every sense of the word. In his actions, in his words, and mu'asharatuhu. Mu'asharatihi. What's mu'asharatihi in English? His dealings with people, his interaction, his way of living, the way that he deals with human beings. So you have to have this hikmah in all three aspects to be called al-Hakim. So he is Luqman al-Hakim, not just because he was given some wisdom in his head, but because he lived, he spoke, and he behaved in a particular way. And that's why we're moving now from the skies to the Prophet ﷺ to Luqman. Because now it's even more accessible, because now you can become Hakim. Because if Luqman can become Hakim, why can't Asim become Hakim? Why can't Atar become Hakim? They can. That's what the Quran is telling us. If you get to what hikmah is, and you have to anticipate this, you need to hope for this, and if you want it, you will get it. If you want it, you will get it. But wanting it requires you to move towards it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah will give, or can give, wisdom to whoever He wishes. وَمَنْ يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَ, and whoever He gives hikmah, فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. He has indeed been given a tremendous amount. وَمَا يُذَكْرُ إِلَّا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. But people don't really understand this. They don't really understand this. People don't know the wisdom of wisdom. They don't know the value of wisdom, except ulil albab, the people of real lub. Lub is a beautiful word. It's translated here in this by Yusuf Ali as understanding. But the word lub actually is the essence of a thing. In fact, it's the essence of a thing. You know, if you want to make almond cakes, you want to make almond cookies. I'm from Scotland, almond shortbread. Or if you're from Egypt, what's this famous basbousa? Yeah, any Egyptians here? Basbousa. You know, you want to really make it well, you need almonds. Okay, this is fact. Okay, and if you use almonds, that's fine. But what you really need is not just the almond. You need the flesh of the almond. Inside the soft part of the almond. In fact, what you don't need is the soft part of the almond. You need the lub of the almond. The essence of what the almond really is. And if you can crush that thing and just get the essence out, you've got the lub. I don't know what you say that in English. Essence is probably the best thing you've got. Which is what we're saying. The people of the essence. It doesn't make sense, does it? Which is why he translated as people of understanding. Because understanding is the lub of a thing. So if you look to the sky and you have lub, you have the reality of what a human being is, he will look to the sky and say, that's no accident. Which is why I don't do Aqidah. Well, I do eventually. Because once they've got to that bit about looking to the sky and looking to the sea and getting touched inside, then teaching Aqidah is dead simple. And you just pick up a book, just go through the book, take you one session, then it's over and you get on with the rest of your life. Whereas other people, what they think Aqidah is you have to study for 25 years. You know, you have to do 25,000 books and you have to learn so many different principles. And then you argue about things and at the end of it you get so confused you can't remember what it was you were doing. That's what but here, if you go to the lub, you have hikmah. And the hikmah can only be understood by the people of the lub, of the essence, who don't just have basbousa, almond shortbread. They have the essence, they know what it is. And that's why if you have this, and alhamdulillah we're blessed with having people in this gathering who really do have this, and that's why I've come is to listen to the likes of Shaykh Muhammad Muslim and Shaykh Afifuddin al-Jailani, because I want to hear what they've got to say. And these people, they have moved from just sitting and watching the mountains, because I think the first time I met Shaykh Muhammad Muslim was in some forest near Oslo, by some lake, and we just sat by the lake and looked over the lake and talked, and it was moving, and it still affects me 12, 13 years later, those moments of just being with the company, because they don't call just by their words, they call by their actions and everything about them. And that's what we're aiming to do. If you get hikmah, that's what you will do later. Your whole being will call. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Udu ila sabili rabbika. Call to the path of your Lord. Bil hikmah. Wal maw'idatil hasana. Wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. Call to the people with hikmah. Wal maw'idatil hasana. And also speak to them gently. And argue with them in gentle ways. So here we've got to the meaning of what hikmah is. And perhaps at this point maybe we should look at some of the definitions of what this is, because maybe I've talked about it and assumed that everybody knows what I'm talking about. Because wisdom in English means different things. What does it actually mean, hikmah in Arabic? So Al-Baghawi, when he talks about this, he says al-hikmah means al-aql, the intellect. But even the word intellect in Arabic doesn't mean the word intellect in English. The word aql is to do with horses. Aqala shay, or means to grasp a horse by the neck, using a means of controlling him, like a lasso or the reins. So you put these reins onto your wild beast. That wild beast is what I think Imam Nusrat is going to be talking about, the difference between the nafs and the heart. But part of that is a wild animal. There's part of you which is wild. But once your intellect, your aql, grasps that and controls that, it becomes a refined beast. And there's a total difference between the wild animal and the trained stallion. But there's a process of grasping it by its neck, which you have to do first. Because if you don't do that first, you're never going to get it under control. So the word aql is that thing which grasps. Now, I don't know if intellect is the right translation for that, is it? It's the best we can do in English. But that just shows the inadequacy of the English compared to the Quranic language. This thing which grasps you, that's what the hikmah is. And he also goes, wal al-aql wal ilm. Because having this ability to grasp something isn't sufficient on its own. Because you also need knowledge. And we're going to be talking about knowledge at a later lesson. Wal amal bihi. And therefore not just knowing, but acting upon it. Because sometimes action is what brings about knowledge. And sometimes knowledge is what brings about action. And if you look at those that know Arabic, one is called amal and one is called ilm. It's the same letters, just in reverse. And that only happens in the Arabic language when the words are connected. You'll always see the words will be connected if they have the same letters, just interchanged. And that's the beauty of the Arabic language. So here, ilm, knowledge, is connected to amal, action. And an example of how the two work together is sometimes you know something and therefore you do it. And sometimes you do something and then you know it. And an example of doing then knowing is, how do you pray? You don't pray unless you have knowledge. To get to the prayer, you need to know that it begins with takbiratul ihram. Allahu Akbar. So you need to know that. But once you know it and you act upon it, it starts to take you spiritually in a different way. Whereas other things, the knowledge only comes after you've done it. For example, the tawaf. Tawaf, you go around the Kaaba 7 times. There is no intellectual reason why you do that. There's no intellectual thought behind this process of walking around the Kaaba. You just walk around the Kaaba 7 times. You don't even need to say anything and your tawaf is accepted. In fact, it's better you don't say anything, because I've seen people, you know, Allah doesn't need a phone. Why are you phoning him? And then you realise that they're maybe not phoning Allah, they're phoning somebody else. Thinking, anyway, alhamdulillah, just don't do anything. You're better off just walking around looking at it if you're a Shafi. And if you're not a Shafi, keep your eyes down. Because according to the Hanafis, looking at the cat, is that right? I was told, because I told people, you look at it, you get extra reward. Hanafis, la hawla wa la quwwata. But anyway, and that's also adab. See, that even there's a wisdom in that, because I know, I used to look, and then when the Hanafis told me, no, keep your eyes down, I kept my eyes down, and I realised, actually, when you put your eyes down, there's a different state to when you look at it. So when you do tawaf with your eyes down, it's different to when you look with your tawaf eyes up. Now, you don't believe me, just do it. All right? Because that's what it's about. Just do it. Because some things you do and then you know what it's about. Some is ilm followed by amal. Some is amal which leads to ilm. Some is knowledge which leads to action. Some is action. Just do it and then you get the knowledge. And once you've got the knowledge, it's experiential. You can't hand it to somebody else. I can't tell you the difference between doing tawaf with your eyes up and your eyes down. I can't. I can't tell you what the difference between saying Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah. Because there's a hadith which says that's all the Prophet ﷺ did. There's another hadith said that he did 6 different du'as. And so what I try to do is sometimes I do Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, and sometimes I do the du'as. And they're totally different. How? How? Explain. Just do it. Okay? Because hikmah is about aql, intellect, ilm, and amal, bihi. And then the most beautiful, isaba fil umur. Al-isaba fil umur. Isaba fil umur. I should have got this translated before I came, shouldn't I? Al-isaba fil umur.
Getting things right.
Getting things right. You know, one of the last camps that we actually, a proper camp, where you had to go out, when you wanted to go to the bathroom, you had to go find a tree. And I remember you saying, number 1 over there and number 2 over there. I was like, what's he talking about? And then it dawned on me what you were saying. Number 1 tree is over there and number 2 trees you can use over there. Okay. Now the last, do you remember that camp? That camp, you organised al-isab fil umur. What did you call it in English? Archery. That's it. See, I'm so slow in this. I'm a bit slow in English and in Arabic and every other language. Archery. What does archery mean? You go, bang! And you get isaba fil umur. There's this little red dot. Al-Hikmah is going, bang! That's what hikmah means. Al-isaba fil umur. What did you say was in English?
Getting things right.
Getting things right, yeah.
Hitting the target, maybe.
Hitting the target. Yeah, I'm glad. See why we've got a real Shaykh? I don't need to make notes because I've got a full-time translator just, alhamdulillah. So hikmah is this. At-Tabari, he says something slightly different. He says, al-fiqh wal-amal. Al-fiqh actually means understanding in Arabic. Ibn Ajiba, what can I say? sufficient. Ibn Ajiba. He says, Istikmal al-nafs al-insaniyya. He says, al-hikmah is actually perfection of your human being, of who you are as a human being. So hikmah is what you're rising for. Hasan al-Basri, if we go back further, he says, al-wara' fi ad-din. Al-wara' fi ad-din. Being careful about your religion. Not allowing yourself to fall into what might be haram. So Ibn Abbas, he says al-ma'rifah, knowing. But whatever hikmah is, they all have this similar theme about something which is special beyond knowledge. It's not just knowing something, but it's knowing and applying it in this very special way. So when we talk about al-Hikm, which is what we are going to hopefully talk about, is this collection of these sayings or these words. Now these words are drawn from the Quran and Sunnah. It's not none of what we're going to say over these next couple of days you will see contradict the Quran and Sunnah. In fact, they are the Quran and Sunnah made simple for us, in simpler, appropriate to our own time. And why do I say that? Is because the Quran, as in one of the hikam we're going to be talking about, how the Quran isn't just for them. It's being revealed over and over again in our lives. And we need to get in touch with that for us to really understand how the Quran works. It's something which continues to be applied spiritually and also intellectually. But to do this you need hikmah. And the hikmah doesn't just come from the sky, it comes from human beings. And that's why in one of the hikam of Ibn Atala, which isn't on your collection here, but I think I'll add it in anyway, of Abu Madian, he says, عَلَيْكَ بِإِسْتِمَاعِ كَلَامِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. He says, you should listen to the words of the ulama. مِنَ الْقَوْمِ. مِنَ الْقَوْمِ. Oh, I can't go into this, can I? Of the people, of the folk. Meaning, basically, am I allowed to say of the Sufis, or is that an incorrect translation? Meaning the people of the spiritual path. You need to listen to them. عليك باستماع كلام العلماء من القوم. فإن حق الله تعالى يجري على ألسنة العلماء. Because the words of the true, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words, they are made manifest on the tongues of the scholars of each age. كل زمان ما يليق بأهله. Which is appropriate to their people. So each generation has a different approach. And if you look at, for example, Sayyidina Shaykh Afifuddin, who will be speaking later, you look at him and you look at his father. They're different. They're a different style, they're a different generation. Same message, but the way that he deals with people is different. He has an interaction which you didn't see from generations before. It's just that's what we need. And when you sit with him, and he sits with his iPhone. He sends, shall I send it by WhatsApp or FaceTime? This is a different kind of Shaykh to my first Shaykh, Habib Ahmed Mashur, for example. He didn't even used to have a watch. He had a watch, and his Shaykh looked and says, "Why have you got that on?" And he threw it out of the window and never wore a watch again. For his whole of his life, he never wore a watch. He had a watch in his pocket, one of these, which was just functional. Just take it out, I know what the time is, he puts it back. That's a different generation to the Shaykh that we have now. He can tell you what time it is in every zone of the world, and he can tell you who to speak to in that zone of the world, and he'll give you their telephone number. And I know that because he has. I say I'm going to Bahrain. He says, "Don't worry. Salaam alaikum. Abdulaziz is on his way." I know it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but he's important. This is. عليك باستماع الكلام العلماء من القوم فإن حق تعالى يجري على ألسنة العلماء كل زمان ما يليق بأهله. Okay, that's one of the hikmah that's on there, so alhamdulillah, I don't feel guilty if I don't do any more. Okay, so who are these two people, the books that we're going to be reading from? Sayyidina Shu'aib Abu Madian, the people from Al-Maghrib, they don't call him Abu Madian Al-Maghribi, they call him Abu Madian Al-Ghawf, is that right? Okay, and the reason why I like to call him Abu Madian Al-Maghribi is not because I'm from the east, but because I'm from the west. I'm from Nottingham, which is in England. And the reason why I like to call him Al-Maghribi is because we have a special connection in the West to this man. First of all, he was born in Sevilla, near Sevilla, which is in Spain. So he was born in 1126 on the Christian era. As a young man, he moved to Marrakesh. From Marrakesh, he moved, which is where he studied the Quran. He memorized the Quran and then studied the Nusus, the early books, as was the tradition. And then he moved to Fez. And when he moved to Fez, which is the spiritual capital of Al-Maghrib, he then came across the great spiritual master like Al-Daqqaq, al-Hirzmi, and al-Hirzmi, he was the one who received the khirqa of Ibn Arabi, who was also from Spain. So here, Abu Majid al-Maghribi starts off with Quran and Hadith, and then he receives the path of the great master of Ibn Arabi and the great esoteric Sufis. But really he was grounded in the way of Imam al-Ghazali. What he loved to read was Imam al-Ghazali. So he combined these two different types, so to speak, of spirituality. And just to complete the story of how it gets here and why I call him al-Maghribi is because, as people may know, my own spiritual connection, so to speak, is through my teacher Al-Habib Ahmed Mashur al-Haddad, who was from Hadramaut and was from the family of the Bani Alawi. And the family of the Bani Alawi have a special connection to Abu Majid al-Maghribi and to Sayyidina Shaykh Afifuddin al-Jailani and his grandfather, Sayyidina Abdul Qadir al-Jailani. Abdul Qadir al-Jailani received his khirqa. You know the khirqa? You know the khirqa here, with this garment, the shawl, that the Prophet ﷺ used to wear the shawl, and he gave his shawl to his nephew, to his cousin Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib karamallahu wajhah, as well as his turban. And then he passed this khirqa from Ali, Sayyidina Ali passed it to his student, Sayyidina Imam Hassan al-Basri, who wasn't really a student, he was just a kid. But he says, this is from the Prophet ﷺ, you're going to be a big shaykh when you grow up. And he did grow up to be the great Taj al-Tabi'in. The next generation, he was the king of that generation. And then he went on to Dawud al-Tayyib, Ma'ruf al-Karisari, Saqad Abu Qasim, until it got to Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. And he put it on his left-hand side, by the way. But anyway, after he was just about to die, he said, send this to the Maghrib. Which is why I call him Abu Majid al-Maghribi. Because he said, send it to the Maghrib. And it was passed all the way to Fez, which is where Abu Majid al-Maghrib received it. And shortly before he died, shortly before Sayyidina Abu Majid al-Maghribi died, he says, you two, Abdullah and Abdurrahman, take this, take it to the east. There's somebody in Hadramaut needs it. Off you go. So they, okay, khalas, they went to Hajj. Okay, we'll find somebody from Hadramaut in Hajj. So they go to Hajj, and the two of them meet the people from Hadramaut. You can always tell them they're always wearing these sarong, you know, short trousers, and they're a little short and dark, and they look funny, their hats always to their sides. You'll find, don't worry about it. So they look for this Jamaat. Oh, there they are. My great-great-grandfather must have been amongst them. So they find them. And then they say, so where's your Shaykh? I've got to give you this. And they says, no, he didn't come this year. Oh. And then Abdullah died. Good job he sent two of them, wasn't it? So Abdurrahman then went to Hadramaut and he handed it to the great wali of the Bani Alawi, whose name was Muhammad bin Ali Ba'alawi, who is called also al-Faqih al-Muqaddam. And up until this time, the Ba'alawis, the people of Hadramaut, were strong, tough people with swords and protect themselves with a sword. And then he received the khirqa. And he came out publicly and he broke his sword over his knee and he says, from today we will use knowledge to fight. And he took the khirqa of Abu Majid al-Maghribi and it's still there in Hadramaut. And so our tradition connects to Sayyidina Abdul Qadir al-Jailani, who will be, his representative will be here soon, and Abu Majid al-Maghribi. So the Hikm that we're going to be reading of there, and the one that we've just mentioned, is from Abu Majid. And Ibn Ata'illah al-Sakandari is a Maliki scholar. And really, I don't want to say too much because otherwise I'll end up speaking just about the two of them. But Ibn Ata'illah, the reason why he's important is because up until that time, Abu Hassan al-Shadhili didn't write books. He didn't write books. You know why? Because he wrote men. That's why why didn't he write books? Because he wrote men. What do you need books for? The whole purpose of books is to make men. So he doesn't need books, he just writes the men. And the men, what did they do? They wrote men. Except Abu Abbas al-Mursi, he said so many things, some of his students wrote them down. So there are some books attached to Abu Abbas al-Mursi. But you can't just keep writing men, because someday you're going to need to read books, because then there's boys like us who are never going to become men, because we don't meet the real men to become men. So we need books, because we don't have men to write us. So Ibn Ata'illah al-Sakandari, he compiled some of these things, the ideas of what made a man a man. Okay? and he put them into his writing. So Ibn Ata'illah is really the man. If you want to understand the Shadri tariqah, you have to go to Ibn Ata'illah, because he compiles it in effect. And the most beautiful is the Hikm, in my opinion. And not only in my opinion, Khwaja Khalifa, he said if it was permitted to read anything else in the Quran, it would have been the Hikm. And that's a bit extreme, but if you read what the Hikm says, then you'll understand. It is a bit extreme, but I can understand it. Okay, let's read a little bit of what it says, because we have about 6 minutes left, inshallah. طيب, the first one, does it say تنوّت أجناس الأعمال لتنوّع واردات الأحوال, or something to that effect? Actions are many types. Okay, right, actions are many types. What does it mean by actions? It means actions are the harakat al-jismaniyya, the movement of the body. Okay, I have to look to this side. A'mal, what's referred to here is physical bodily movements. Ahwal is harakat al-qalbiyya, movements of the heart. So the reason why we have different actions, like fasting, like prayer, like zakat, like tawaf, like all of these things, like dhikr. And even within dhikr, there are different types of dhikr. And in fact, you're going to feel some of those tastes on this gathering, because we have 3 masters here from 3 different tariqahs, so to speak. And each one of them has a different taste to the way that they will be leading the dhikr. Why is that? It's because different physical actions are related to different spiritual actions. So because there are different things going on in our hearts, and what's a heart in Arabic? Qalb. And why is it called qalb? لتقلبه. Because of its taqallub. Taqallub meaning this thing. This is in English. Fluttering. Ah! Shaykh, the son of a Shaykh. Fluttering. It's called a heart because of a fluttering. That sounds really kind of Sufi, doesn't it? The heart is called the heart because of the fluttering. Because it moves, it changes. And the reason why it changes is because there are many movements in there. It's not just boom, 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 which is the physical heart. But just as the physical heart has these key functions to keep the physical body going, the spiritual heart has many different movements, which give us the different actions. An example, gratitude. Gratitude, which is one of the things we just heard earlier. What does gratitude mean? Is when you feel something in your heart that you've been given something. Wow, that's kind. That's what shukr. Shukr can't. One of the elements of shukr is farh. If you go to al-Ghazali, Ghazali says one of the farh means pleasure, enjoyment, joy. Is joy at something. So when you feel joy, then it leads to shukr. If you don't feel any joy, actually your shukr is a different type. Okay? And Imam al-Ghazali says that actually one of the essential elements of shukr is joy. So here we have a spiritual state, so to speak, which is manifest through the spiritual state of joy, which is manifest through the state of action. When the Prophet ﷺ spent all night in prayer, this is really beautiful, this whole story, you have to go back one step. He was with his wife, Sayyidatuna Aisha radiallahu anha. So they were close. And then it's her night to be with her husband. SubhanAllah, look at the adab of the greatest of creation. He turns to her and says, "Can I pray?" Ajib. He asks her permission if he can get up and do tahajjud. Just look at the adab of he's made nafilatan lak. You have to do it anyway, but out of adab he asks her. And of course she gives him permission. And so he gets up and he prays. And he prays the whole night. And his legs swell up. And his tears are pouring. And his face is almost engraved with the tears from his feet are swelling. And Sayyidatuna Aisha is amazed at this. And she says, "This was the most amazing thing that I've seen." And so she asks him, "Why do you do this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven you things that you didn't even do." مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِن ذَنْبِكَ وَمَا تَأَخَّرَ. He says, you didn't sin and He still forgave you. You know, it's just Why do you do this? What did he say? Allah akuna abdan shakura. Am I not supposed to be a grateful servant? So here, inward actions become manifest through outward actions. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made lots of different physical actions for us, so that we can relate to these waridat. Now waridat is important here because inshallah that's what we'll be moving into next session. Let me just talk about the word warada. This is one word I've looked up because I didn't want to burden my Shaykh too much. Out of respect to Allah for Shaykh Muhammad Muslim, I actually got a dictionary. Say alhamdulillah. So this is gratitude. See, there's joy in myself and pride, but hopefully pride which is a good pride that I've actually achieved something. Okay, warada means to arrive, to appear, to be said, to say something. And warada fil kitab means it was said, it was put in the book. To come to receive. So these are all physical actions of appearing. Warada means to appear. And warada, which is connected to that, is the fourth form, means to make come. Transitive. To transport, which is why waridat is usually exports. No, imports. Exports, yeah. No, imports. Waridat. Yeah. See, I'm not so good in English. If I'm working one language, I forget the other one. Okay? To transport, to deposit or produce. So waridat is something which comes to you. Okay? Okay. Appears to you. Let's go to what the word says. To know what ajnas al-a'mal, there's different actions. Why? لِتَنَوْعِ, because there's lots of types of waridat. Fil ahwal. Waridat al-ahwal. So where do these waridat come from? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these waridat, everybody should just stop for a minute, because maybe we need to do this experientially. We need to think about this in our practical terms. You think about one thing that just made you over the moon. I was just talking to Shaykh Afifuddin at breakfast, and he said somebody was giving this example of why a particular dance is permitted in Islam. And he's saying actually it's a mistake. He said that when Sayyidina Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, who spent many years in Ethiopia, he came to Al-Madinah after the Battle of Khaybar. So he'd been away from the Prophet ﷺ, except for one short visit, for about 14 years. And so many people hadn't seen him. And when Sayyidina Ja'far ibn Abi Talib came just after the battle, one of the companions started to dance on one leg, spinning around on one leg, because he was so happy. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, are you dancing because of the victory of Al-Khaybar, or because you've seen Sayyidina Ja'far? And he said both. So here, this extreme joy led him to dance around on one leg. Okay, have you ever felt joy like that made you want to dance around on one leg? I'm not saying you did dance around on one leg, but did you ever feel that? Okay, now think about, did you ever feel such sadness that you felt, I don't know if I can carry on anymore? The loss is so great that I don't know if I can carry on anymore. Have you ever felt such, you can talk about every kind of, these are all waridat, these are things which you didn't choose. I don't choose to be ecstatic. It just happens. And I'm a bit crazy, so that's kind of, it just happens more often to some of us than others. Other people, they don't choose to feel sadness. They don't choose to feel this. They just waridat. They just come. They just come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They just look at the mountains and they say, wow. Now they're the kind of people I like. Because when I take them to Glencoe and I say, did that happen by accident? They go, wow. Then you know that they're going to be strong Muslims. You know that their deen is powerful. When they say wow, and I know this because I've taken people out, and even after the cannabis has got out of their body, they're still saying wow. It's because, not that all my friends used to take, but admittedly some of them did. And then it doesn't matter, they weren't Muslim then when they took it, they were Muslim when they finished. Why? Because I took them to the mountains. And I took them to them trees. I said, hug this tree, man. He said, yeah, he's a real Sufi. Tree hugging Sufis. And he hugs the tree. And then what happens? He feels something. And by the way, hugging trees is sunnah. So don't come and think that Abdulaziz is one of these men of bid'ah that dance around in 1 foot hugging trees. Alright? We don't have enough time for the proof. Okay, I'll give you the proof. The Prophet ﷺ was on his minbar, giving his khutbah, talking to the people. And before that, he always used to lean against a tree. When in the mosque, there weren't that many people, so he used to lean against a tree. And then one of the ladies at the back says, this isn't fair, I can't hear him. My son will make you some steps. You can stand on the steps. My son will make them. So Prophet ﷺ, no problem, you do that. So she went, she instructed her son to make 3 steps. So she made this, so proudly she comes and gives him. And the Prophet ﷺ was very happy. So he stood on the steps and started to talk to the people. As he started to speak to the people, the tree began to cry. The tree began to cry. And this is mutawatir. Everybody witnessed it. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do? He got off the minbar and he hugged the tree. So don't come and say the Shaykh is some kind of Sufi tree hugging Shaykh. Okay, so I take my friends, some of them who may have not been behaving in the most Islamic of ways because they weren't Muslim, then they came and they hugged the trees and they felt something. They looked at the tree and they felt something. Now the difference is when does that waridat connect to our daily actions? And that's why we have what we call a wird. The word wird is that action which you do on a daily basis. Everything you do, daily basis. Your salah is a wird. How many times? 5 times. It's not just salah. We have fasting once a year. But not just once a year. How many days a month? 3 days a month, every month, inshallah. Plus a few other days, like the 10th of this and the 9th of that, etc. But that's fasting. But every single thing, Quran, for example. Surah Al-Kahf, how many times a week? Once or twice, depending. The different hadith. Once, but both of them talk about Friday. So each one, this Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, or 33, is called a wird. So here we have what we call a wird and a warid. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave many waridat, lots of things like joy, sadness, ecstasy, happiness, contentment, gratitude. All of these things are things that happen in your heart. Because of all of these different things, there's different physical actions, which are why there's a connection between wird and warid. And inshallah, in the second session, that's what I intend to do. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.